verse 5 begins by saying, now the one having prepared us for this very purpose. And this very purpose is related to verse 4, speaking of that expectation of Paul and the early church, the new covenant believers, the remnant, their expectation that the mortal may be swallowed up by life. Okay? So that for that very thing, God had was the one that was preparing them so that the mortal may be swallowed up by life. And so he goes on to say, having given to us the pledge of the Spirit. Okay? Now the concept of the pledge or the guarantee, we understand that a guarantee is a form of a down payment. Okay, a pledge or a down payment, which in the concept of a transaction, a pledge or a guarantee was given as proof of the completion of a greater promise. So, for example, if I promised you, if I promised to give you a mansion, okay, then as a guarantee or a pledge, I might give you the keys. So you hold once you have the keys, right? So that when the mansion is completed, you have the keys already to enter. So the pledge was some smaller thing which was given first as an assurance of the completion of the greater promise, right? That's the context of the pledge. So God had given them the Spirit. On the day of Pentecost, the Spirit was given and continued to be given, and that was viewed as a guarantee or a pledge of the greater thing that was coming, right? Which would be the uniting of the Father with the believers, right? That was the greater thing. So they had the pledge of the Spirit of the Son, which was given on the day of Pentecost, according to Galatians 4, verse 6 and 7. Because you are sons, God has given you the Spirit of His Son. He sent it into your hearts, crying, Abba, Father, right? So the Spirit was in their hearts, crying out, Abba, Father, yearning to be connected with the Father, right? That was the down payment they had. But the true or the fulfilling of the promise was really when the Father and the believers were united. That was the greater promise. That was the real deal, as we may say, right? So in the context of 2 Corinthians 5, the historical context of 2 Corinthians 5, we must remember that the remnant at that time were experiencing harsh persecution from their Israelite brethren, from their Jewish brethren, right? And if they didn't have the guarantee, chances are they may lose hope, okay? But because they had the guarantee, Paul is saying, look, you already have the guarantee, you have the down payment, so to speak. And so you will get, the promise will be fulfilled if you just remain faithful, if you just do not lose hope. Okay, so the guarantee was proof that their hope for the new covenant body or the new covenant tent was not in vain. Okay, so the new covenant body is what they awaited, the fulfillment of that new covenant body, the fulfillment of that new covenant promise, the fulfillment of that new covenant world, right? The full establishing of that. That was what they were awaiting, okay? But in the meantime, they had to be in the old covenant body. We're not talking, as we said, if you haven't heard this yet, go back and watch the previous video where the new covenant body is not speaking about the biological body. The old covenant body is not speaking about biological bodies. The old covenant body, singular, was the corporate body of Israel. Okay? And the new covenant body would be the corporate body of Christ, right? So they were awaiting the fullness of the new covenant body, the body of Christ. Okay? So they had to dwell in the old covenant tent. Okay? And that tent or that body was waxing old. It was a garment that was wearing out. Okay, all of these things we looked at in the previous study. So if you want to look at the details of that, watch the previous video. So they were looking forward by faith to the new covenant body where they could dwell in the fullness of the new covenant benefits. They can live in the new cosmos reality of being sons of God. All right? Let's look at Romans chapter 8, verse 18. Romans 8, verse 18 to see this, right? Romans 8, verse 18. My computer is slow. I really need an upgrade. Really need an upgrade. Anyway, Romans 8, 18, right? So Paul says, again, remember the context, the persecution that the remnant was going through at the hands of their Israelite brethren, right? So Paul says, for I reckon that the sufferings of the present time, he wasn't talking about you in the 21st century. He wasn't talking about the dark ages where they had the Spanish Inquisition and all of these things. No, he was talking about the year 55 in that time period there, during the 40-year period between between Pentecost and the destruction of the temple at Jerusalem. During that year, during that period of time, those 40 years, the church, the early church, the apostolic church, right? The remnant people, they were experiencing sufferings of that present time. That's what Paul is talking about. Okay? So the sufferings of the present time are not comparable to the coming glory. Okay? The coming glory to be revealed to who? Not to you. To them. So it was something that was going to happen in their time. Okay? Always keep your context. Right? Always keep your context. This thing was going to happen in their time. Right? So let's see what was going to happen. Verse 19, for the honest expectation of the creation awaits the revelation of the sons of God. The sons of God were going to be revealed. Okay? The sons of God were going to reveal. The sons of God would be those, according to John chapter 1, verses 11 to 13, those who had received Christ. It says there, God gave them authority, gave them the right and the privilege to become sons of God. So that would manifest in and be revealed. Okay? That was what they were waiting on. And that would manifest and be revealed when the old tent, the old covenant tent, the old body was removed completely, and the new tent, the new garment, the new body which remained, that would be the sons of God. Right? That's how the sons of God would be revealed. Okay? So So again, we see the concept of the transition, right? There was a transition happening from the old covenant, the old cosmos, the old eon, right? The Sinai covenant, the ministration of death, the ministration of condemnation, right? There was a transition now from that to the new cosmos, the new eon, the new covenant world, the new heavens and earth, right? All of that, the covenant of the Spirit, right? There was a transition happening, and Israel was supposed to be transitioning from the old to the new. And during that 40-year period, that generation, which Jesus said all things would be fulfilled in that generation, right? So the time period where the church was going through this tribulation that Paul talked about, the sufferings of that present time, that would give way to a glorious new covenant age, or the new cosmos. And in that new cosmos, the sons of God, which were in a sense hidden by the old covenant tent or the old covenant body, would be revealed in the new cosmos as the true worshipers, which Jesus had talked about in John chapter 4. Remember when Jesus told the woman, the time is coming and is now when they will be worshiping God in the spirit and in truth, right? These will be the true worshipers. Good. So let's look at a chart here to understand the benefit, because sometimes we don't have a concept of what is this sons of God all about, right? And why was this such a big deal, right? What Israel had under the Sinai covenant, which was a glorious covenant, but even in that covenant, they were still servants of the king, servants of God. But in the new covenant, the relationship would be enhanced from servants of God to sons of God, right? Sons of the king, right? So if we look at this chart, for example, here, this chart, which is from our masterclass, right? We would be able to see the superiority of the relationship. Under the Sinai covenant, Israel had a servant-master relationship to God. They related to God as servants. And the Greek word there is doulos, which is actually slave, right? They had a servant-master relationship. So that when we think of a servant, even the most zealous servant, he or she is still of a different lineage to the king, right? They are only related to the king by employment, by the job that they are employed to do, right? So it doesn't matter how highly skilled and how obedient of a servant you are not related to the king. However, the son of the king is superior because he or she is of the same lineage as the king and is related by blood. So Israel was given the first opportunity of moving from a servant-master relationship to a son-father relationship, where they were not just to be obedient servants and slaves, but now they were to be sons of the king, related to the king, having the king's DNA, having the king's spirit, right? And inheriting the king's property and the king's possessions, right? Which is God's kingdom and God's possessions, right?